The night was wrong from the start, the kind of wrong that seeps into your bones, making every creak of the house feel like a warning. The air in our small suburban home was heavy, the silence so thick it pressed against my chest, squeezing the breath out of me. I stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing the remnants of dinner from a plate, the warm water soothing my hands but doing nothing for the unease curling in my gut. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, a low drone that seemed to mock the stillness. My son Ryan had been quiet all evening, retreating to his room the moment he pushed his plate away. I should have checked on him, should have asked what was wrong, but the weight of the week, work bills, the endless grind had dulled my instincts. I told myself he was just being a teenager, caught in that moody phase where silence was his new language. Boys grow up, don't they? They drift, they pull away. It was normal. At least that's what I kept repeating in my head, but something was off. The silence wasn't the comforting kind that wraps around you at the end of a long day when the world finally quiets down. This was different, oppressive, like the air before a storm. It made my skin prickle, my heart beat just a little too fast. I dried my hands on a dish towel, the rough fabric grounding me for a moment, and stepped into the living room. The space was dark, save for a sliver of light spilling from the hallway. And there, in the doorway, stood Ryan. His slight frame was barely outlined by the dim glow, his face half hidden in shadow. But his eyes, those deep brown eyes I'd known since the day he was born, were locked on mine with an intensity that stopped me cold. My breath caught, a sharp pang of fear slicing through me. This wasn't my Ryan, not the boy who used to cling to my hand at the park or laugh at my terrible jokes. This was someone else, someone I didn't recognize, Ryan. My voice sounded fragile, like it might shatter if I spoke too loudly. He didn't answer, but he took a slow, deliberate step toward me, his bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. The usual spark in his movements, the easy confidence of a 16-year-old who thought he had the world figured out, was gone. He moved like he was carrying something heavy, something he couldn't put down. My heart pounded harder now, a steady thrum that echoed in my ears. I wanted to ask what was wrong, to demand an explanation, but my tongue felt leaden, stuck to the roof of my mouth. He crossed the room and sat on the couch beside me, closer than he'd been in months, too close. The space between us felt charged, electric, like the air was humming with unspoken words. I could feel the heat of his body, the faint tremor in his breath, and it sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't the warmth of a mother and son reconnecting. This was something else, something that made my stomach twist with dread. "Mom," he said finally, his voice so soft it was almost a whisper. The word hung in the air, fragile and weighted with something I couldn't name. My hands clenched the edge of the couch, nails digging into the fabric as I braced myself. "What is it, sweetheart?" I managed, though my voice cracked, betraying the calm I was trying to project. He didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on his hands, fingers twisting in the hem of his worn t-shirt. The silence stretched taut and unbearable, and I could feel the weight of his hesitation, the struggle to find the words. My mind raced, conjuring 1,000 possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. Was he in trouble? Had he done something at school? Was he hurt? The not knowing was suffocating, pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. And then he spoke, 3 words that shattered the fragile peace of the night. "Mom." "I'm sorry." The ground seemed to fall away beneath me, my heart lurching as if I'd been pushed off a cliff. "Sorry? Sorry for what?" My mind scrambled to make sense of it, but his eyes, those eyes that had always been so open, so trusting, held something new. Fear. Not just fear of me, but fear of himself, of whatever truth he was about to unleash. Wanted to reach for him, to pull him into my arms like I had when he was little, but my body wouldn't move. I was frozen, caught between love and dread, desperate to understand, but terrified of what I might hear. "What do you mean, Ryan?" My voice trembled, barely holding together. He took a shaky breath, his shoulders hunching as if he could make himself smaller, invisible. "I didn't mean to," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "It just happened and I can't take it back." My stomach churned, a cold sweat prickling at the back of my neck. What had happened? What couldn't he take back? I leaned forward, my hands shaking now, and tried to keep my voice steady. "Ryan, talk to me, please." He looked up then, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes hit me like a punch. This wasn't just a teenage confession, not some petty mistake like sneaking out or failing a test. This was something deeper, something that had been eating him alive. "It was last month," he said, his voice barely audible. "The camping trip with Lucas's family." My mind flashed to that weekend, the one I'd barely thought twice about. Ryan had gone with his best friend Lucas and Lucas's family, including his older sister Emily. I had trusted them. Trusted Ryan. It was just a trip, a chance for him to have fun, to make memories. But now, as he spoke, I could feel the pieces of that trust crumbling. "Emily. She kissed me," Ryan continued, his voice cracking under the weight of the confession. "And I didn't stop it, Mom. It wasn't just a kiss. It felt real." The words landed like a blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Emily, Lucas's older sister, the girl I'd known since she was in pigtails, who had babysat Ryan when he was younger. My mind reeled, images of her kind, responsible Emily clashing with this new, unthinkable reality. Ryan's face was a mask of guilt, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, and I could see the storm raging inside him. Shame, confusion, fear of what I'd think. My chest tightened, a tangle of emotions, shock, betrayal, disbelief, twisting into a knot I couldn't unravel. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice barely holding together. "What are you saying?" I wanted to believe this was a mistake, a fleeting moment of teenage impulsivity, but the way his shoulders slumped, the way his hands trembled, told me it was more. He swallowed hard, his gaze dropping to the floor as if he couldn't bear to meet my eyes. "I didn't know what to do," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It happened so fast, and I liked it, Mom. I didn't want to, but I did, and now I can't stop thinking about her." The admission hit me like a wave, pulling me under. My son, my little boy, who'd once clung to me during thunderstorms, was confessing feelings I wasn't ready to hear. I felt a sharp pang of loss, as if the Ryan I knew was slipping away, replaced by this stranger sitting beside me. Pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady my racing heart. "You kissed her," I repeated, more to myself than to him, testing the words, feeling their weight. "Emily, and it meant something to you." My voice cracked, betraying the calm I was desperate to maintain. Ryan nodded, a single jerky movement, and a tear slipped down his cheek. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "We were just talking by the campfire, and she looked at me, and then it just happened. I know it was wrong. Mom, I know I messed up." His vulnerability tore at me, the raw honesty in his voice cutting through my anger. He wasn't just confessing a kiss. He was grappling with something bigger, something he didn't fully understand, a shift in his identity, a step into a world of emotions he wasn't equipped to navigate. I wanted to scream, to demand how he could let this happen, how he could betray the trust I had placed in him. But the pain in his eyes stopped me. He was hurting too, drowning in guilt and confusion, and I realized that my anger wouldn't fix this. It wouldn't bring back the simplicity of the life we'd had before those 3 words. "Mom, I'm sorry," changed everything. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus on him, on the boy I loved more than anything. "Ryan," I said, my voice softer now, though it trembled with the effort. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He wiped at his eyes, his fingers shaking. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared you'd hate me. Scared I disappointed you." I didn't even know what it meant at first, but it felt big. Too big to keep inside. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as the weight of his confession settled over us. I thought of Emily, her warm smile, the way she'd always been like a daughter to me. Now that image was tainted, fractured by the knowledge of what had happened. I felt betrayed, not just by Ryan, but by the world I thought I understood that my son had crossed a line, and I didn't know how to pull him back, or if I even could. "Do you regret it?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. I wasn't sure what I wanted him to say. Part of me hoped he'd say yes, that it was a mistake he'd never repeat. But another part, the part that saw the turmoil in his eyes, knew it wasn't that simple. Ryan hesitated, his gaze distant, as if searching for an answer he didn't have. "I don't know," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if it was a mistake, or if it was me figuring out who I am. That's what scares me most, Mom. I don't know what this means." His words hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty, and I felt a fresh wave of fear. Was this a phase, a fleeting crush that would fade with time? Or was it the beginning of something more, a part of him I'd never seen before? I wanted to protect him, to shield him from the confusion and pain, but I knew I couldn't. Was growing up, stepping into a world where I couldn't hold his hand every step of the way. "What now, Ryan?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What happens next?" He looked at me then, and for a moment I saw the boy I'd always known, the one who needed his mom, who trusted me to make things right. But there was something new in his eyes, a flicker of determination, as if he were trying to find his own way through the mess. "I don't know," he said softly. "But I can't pretend it didn't happen. I can't just forget her." The honesty in his voice was both a comfort and a wound. He wasn't running from this, wasn't hiding anymore. But that meant I couldn't either. I had to face this with him, no matter how much it hurt. I reached out my hand, hovering over his for a moment before I let it rest on his shoulder. The contact grounded me, reminding me that he was still my son, still the boy I'd raised. "Ryan," I said, my voice steadier now, "this is a lot. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to pretend I do, but I'm here. We're going to figure this out together." His eyes searched mine, a mix of relief and doubt flickering across his face. "Do you mean that?" he asked, his voice small, like he was afraid to hope. I nodded, squeezing his shoulder. "Yes, it's going to hurt, and it's going to take time, but we'll get through this, I promise." He leaned into me then, his head resting against my shoulder, and for the first time that night, I felt a glimmer of the connection we'd always had. It wasn't the same, not warm and easy, like it used to be, but it was something. A fragile thread holding us together. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him close, and let the tears I'd been holding back slip down my cheeks. He was trembling, his body shaking with the weight of everything he'd been carrying. And I knew this was only the beginning, Dot. There were questions I didn't have answers to. Conversations we'd need to have about boundaries, about feelings, about what this meant for him and for us. But for now, this was enough. We were facing it together. The days that followed were quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. Ryan and I moved carefully around each other, our words few but heavy with meaning. I watched him closely, searching for signs of the boy I knew, the one who'd always been so open with me. He was still there. I could see it in the way he lingered at the breakfast table, the way he'd glance at me as if checking to see if I was still there. But there was a new distance, too. a space where his thoughts lived, thoughts he wasn't ready to share. I wanted to bridge that gap to pull him back to me, but I knew I had to give him time to process, time to understand, time to forgive himself. One evening, I found him sitting on the back porch, staring out at the fading sunlight. The air was cool, the sky streaked with pink and gold, and for a moment, I just watched him. His face was softer now, the sharp edges of guilt dulled by time, but the pain was still there, lingering in the set of his jaw, the way his hands gripped the edge of the chair. I sat beside him, our shoulders brushing, and we stayed like that. For a while, the silence between us comfortable for the first time in weeks. "You're not alone," I said finally, the words slipping out like a promise. He didn't respond right away, but his hand found mine, his fingers curling around my own, and I felt a warmth spread through me. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. Dad, as we sat there, the weight of that night, the night everything changed, settled into something new. Not lighter, not yet, but different, manageable. I realized then that love, even when it's tested, even when it bends, under the strain, has a way of holding strong. Ryan was still my son, and I was still his mother. And no matter what lay ahead, we'd face it together. The path wasn't clear, and the wounds weren't fully healed, but we had each other. And that I knew would be enough.